Hey, it's Trip here from the 87th. This video is about the air-to-air Tacan system in BMS 4.33. Information is current as of update 1. So the purpose of the system is so that two aircraft can tie to each other and see their distance apart in the lower right corner of the DED on the home page, the CNI page. And the way they do this is they both go to their Tacan ILS DED page and they type in numbers or channels that are 63 numbers apart. For instance, if the lead aircraft types in 1 as his channel, then the other aircraft would type in 64. In other words, he'd add 63 to whatever number lead is using and type that number in. So those are paired channels, 63 numbers apart. The way you remember it's 63 numbers apart and not 62 or 64 or some other number is if you just take the standard altimeter setting of 2992 and you subtract those two numbers from one from the other. If you subtract 29 from 92, you get 63. So that's how I remember that it's 63 numbers apart. Okay, so now in order for this to work, both aircraft have to be in the air-to-air mode on their Tacan. So now we're at air-to-ground mode. We hit the sequence DCS switch here, and that'll take us to the air-to-air mode. And to change the band, we have to be in Yankee. So to change that, we put the asterisk in the scratch pad, hit the 0, and then enter, and that'll change the band. So both aircraft have to be in air-to-air Yankee with their respective channel set. Now when that's set up properly, when they come back to the CNI page, in this lower right corner of the DD, they'll be able to read their distance apart. Now you're not seeing a number here because I'm up with some AI and I can't direct them what channel to set, but the number will come up in this position. So it's very useful actually. One case I can think of, one example, is the number 2 aircraft in a 2-ship and lead says to spread right for 1.5 miles. Well, if I'm spread right, I'm at his 3 o'clock position, I can't get my radar on him, my air-to-air radar on him to see what my distance is. I could read that in this portion of the HUD if I could get a radar lock, but he's off to my left side 90 degrees and I can't get him on a radar. So it's very convenient to look down here at the distance. I can look at the HSD and kind of estimate where he is based on what range settings I have. But the most accurate way would be to look at the DED, and it'll give me my distance from him in miles and tenths of miles. So that's a good way to station keep. Alright, so the way the scheme is set up, that was a 2-ship example. The lead sets in one number and the wingman sets in a number that's 63 numbers different, usually by adding 63. But if you have more than one wingman, if I'm a lead out here with, in this case, a 4-ship, or if I had a 3-ship with me, each of those wingmen can't set in 64 Yankee in this example. I'm on 1 Yankee. If they were to all set in 64 Yankee, it would be good for them because they each would read their distance from me, and that's cool. But from my point of view, if they had 64 Yankee set in and I read this number, I wouldn't know who I was reading my distance from, whether it was 2, 3, or 4. Now the number that gets displayed here would be the airplane that's closest to me at that instant, but I wouldn't know who that was. So this is really not giving me any useful information other than to know that somebody's within this many miles away from me. So we have to have another scheme for setting up the air-to-air Tacan when we have more than just one wingman. And the way we do that is we want to tie the element leads together. So lead of the 4-ship is the lead of the first element, and number 3 is the lead of the second element. So I want to tie 1 and 3 together. So if lead is on 1 Yankee, then 3 would be on 6-4 Yankee. And so now as the flight lead, I know where the second element is. I don't necessarily know where number 4 is because he's on a different band, and I'll explain that in a second. But I kind of have an idea of where number 4 is by knowing where number 3 is, because number 4 is supposed to be in close proximity to his lead, supporting him. They're supporting each other. So if I know where 1 is, I know where both of them are. And the same is true here. I assume that my wingman is close by. I can't read his number here, but I assume he's close by because he's supposed to be supporting me. Now, to continue with the scheme, as I said, number 1 and number 3 are tied together on Yankee band, and number 2 and number 4 are tied together on X-ray band. So the number 4 aircraft is going to set 1 X-ray. So if lead's on 1 Yankee, number 4 will be on 1 X-ray. And number 2 is going to set 6-4 X-ray. So they're going to be able to read the distance between their 2 aircraft, between number 2 and number 4. So that's the way the scheme is set up. Now if you have just 3 aircraft, you still set it up where the lead aircraft and number 3 are paired, 1 Yankee, 6-4 Yankee, and the number 2 aircraft would be on 6-4 X-ray. That's just the way it's done, because as I said, it doesn't do lead any good to just read a number up here in the DED and not know who it is. He needs to know that that number is the number 3 airplane, the element lead of the second element. Alright, now with the tankers, it works a little bit differently. In real life, they're still having to put in a number that's 63 channels apart. But in Falcon, it seems that when you call the AWACS and you want to know where the nearest tanker is, and they say it's Camel somebody on a bearing of something, and he's on 29 Yankee. Well, if I go up to the ILS Tacan page and I set in 29 Yankee, and then I make sure I'm in air-to-air Yankee, I come back to the CNI page. That aircraft, that tanker is, what, 48.5 miles from me. Now I don't know what his bearing is necessarily. And what I mean by that is, if I look down at the HSI and I put the mode selector in Tacan, and I see the bearing selector, or the head of the bearing pointer rather, just doing a constant rotation around the HSI, I know I've got a KC-135 selected, because the KC-135 won't tell me what the bearing is to his position. It'll tell me his range, which is 49 miles, but it doesn't tell me what his bearing is. Now if I go up here and set in 6-3 Yankee, and I just happen to have a KC-10 in the area, set in 6-3 air-to-air Yankee, I come back down to the HSI, and now it's telling me that in the Tacan mode, it's telling me that he's 25 miles away from me, and he's 10 degrees to the left of the nose of my aircraft. So if I turn to this heading, I'll go right toward him, and then I'll see him in 25 miles. Alright, so that is a KC-10, and it works that way in real life as I understand it. Alright, now just to back up just for a half a second here, if I'm tied to my my element lead, he's on 6-4 Yankee, I'm on 1 Yankee. When I come down to the HSI, I don't have to be in Tacan mode all the time, and I'm not, because I'm using the nav mode for steer point navigation and so forth. But if I want to know what my distance is from my element lead, I could go over to the Tacan or the mode selector and put it in Tacan, and I would read his distance, the same distance that I'm reading here. I would read up here in the lower right corner of the DED if that were my my number 3 wingman. Alrighty. So I think that's it, what I wanted to explain about air-to-air Tacan. I hope the information is helpful, and trip out.